Welcome to another flip class. This one is a part of our Mythical Nile unit, and we will talk about the nature of myths. So, what is a myth? This is a definition from dictionary.com. It is a traditional legendary story trying to explain something of nature, some detail or phenomenon. When we talk about nature, we're talking about making cognitive sense out of chaotic data provided by nature. Nature, in our use, is natural, the outside world, the fauna and flora, and also human nature and social nature, cultural nature, as a part of it, a part of human nature. In order to do that, the myth uses or engage our imagination in a web of dualisms. It uses two parts, two poles of the same thing in order for us to find the mediator, the third element that it goes to neither extreme. It's in the middle and it is the right amount of the dual. Just it's the equator between the two poles. Let's take it step by step. First, let's talk about some characteristics of myth. Well, at first glance, myth seems nonsensical. It seems like random collection of data which makes just no sense. A god with some very weird features has the head of an alligator, the legs of a man. A character is introduced, it goes out. The relationships between the characters are not consistent. It seems arbitrary. It seems that it makes no sense. And it is true. It is, in a way, arbitrary. But it's also very much not true. There is a logic to it. The logic is in patterns, it's not in the details. And in order to make sense out of that, let's take an analogy. Let's compare myth as to a language. Myth is like language in the sense that at first human beings thought that the sounds in language are representing of the thing itself. To understand and think of the word cicada, it tries to recreate the sound of the insect, the tss of the cicada. In Hebrew, the name of it is tzartzar, which also has the same tss to it. This thing is called in Hebrew bakbuk. Bakbuk because when you pour something out of it, it does this bubbling sound, right? Bak, 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 bak. Hence, bakbuk. Bottle has the same ba feature. Botella, well, basically the same thing. The name for this insect in English is cricket because it does one of those creaking sounds, right? In Hebrew, again, tzartzar, and it does this violin sound. But then again, it's not that simple. Think about other kind of words, like tree. What does the word tree has to do with the thing it's trying to indicate? Or etz in Hebrew has different kind of sounds to the same thing. Arbol has nothing to do with that. And it becomes even more complicated. We talked about cricket, which has some resemblance to the insect, the sound that the insect makes. But cricket also means this weird game of Indians or Englishmen throwing a ball on, I don't even know what it is, a bunch of sticks, wearing sweaters and drink tea. So which one is it? These sounds representing of what exactly? Different sounds in different language, or the same sound in different language, represent completely different things. Confusing. Well, the first kind of words, like cicada, like bakbuk, they are called otoimanopoeia. These are very special kind of words in a language, and they are not representative of the majority of words in a language. The majority of words follow a different kind of rule. In order to understand the logic of a language, we need to pay attention not to the details, not to the specific sounds, but to their combination. The logic is in the patterns. When we zoom out and we pay attention to the combination of sounds which creates a word, the words are symbols. They point at a thing. They are not the thing itself. They just symbolize the thing. We understand that more accurately. When you pay attention to words gathered together, they create a sentence. A sentence conveys an idea. Several sentences together, they create now a paragraph or an argument, which is a complex idea. This kind of logic can be found in mythology. Myths follow a specific pattern. Different kinds of cultures create different mythical stories to explain the same thing. This same thing that they are trying to explain is called an archetype. This is a type of a story, type of a myth, trying to explain a specific thing. There are several myths of creation in different cultures. They found it necessary to explain how come an order comes out of chaos, how come this chaotic nature still creates us, some kind of order comes out of nature. And each culture has its own different story of creation. If we think about the biblical myth of God creating man, and from the rib of the man, the woman, and from this pair of man and woman, everyone else, this is the biblical myth of creation. The Kogi has a different one of Mother Earth giving birth to all this splendor that we see. So we can say that in mythology, the archetypes are the ethic element of it. They are universal. The thing that the culture wants to explain by the myth is ethic. It is universal. Most cultures want to explain the same things. The emic part of it is the specifics each culture, the specific explanation each culture provides to the archetype. In order to get to the meaning of myth, we need to pay attention to the little parts, to the little building blocks, to the units that creates it, the words and sentences that creates the language of the myth. And we have to pay attention to the relationships between them. The relation between the words, they create the sentence. The relations between the units of the myth, they create the meaning of the myth. The first thing will be to identify the specifics, the specific units of a myth. The specific building blocks of myths, they're called mythems. How do we identify them? Well, we take the plot and we distill it. We strip it out of everything else until we're left with X violates the law, then Y will punish X, then X wants to escape. The most simplified plot we are able to create. Now, what do we do with that? We try to find the relationships between these very small, between our mythems building blocks. There is a complication. Well, of course there is a complication. The complication is this. When we think about building blocks, when we think about mythems, when we think about actions, we think about linear time, about cause and effect, about things going in a specific order, with the time going streaming forward and not able to reverse itself. In mythology, time does not act just like that. We always hear the story in a linear way. We always hear the story one word at a time, one sentence at a time, an action, and after that following action, a reaction. But time in mythology is something else. It's the time of the gods. They can reverse time. For them, time is reversible. These are divine stories. This is the divinity itself. The god of the myth is not symbolized in the myth. The myth does not symbolize God. It is God itself. It is the divine itself. Hence, time in it is reversible, is timeless. It is something that is beyond time. The message it tries to convey to us is something that is eternal. So if it is eternal, we need a way to understand it, not in a chronological manner, but in an absolute manner. To do that, we need to pay attention not to the linear relations between the mythems, but to the web of relations. To find that, to get to this absolute meaning in the absolute time of the mythems, we need first to distinguish between the web of dualism. We already spoken a little bit about it at the beginning. Let's see how we make sense out of it now. There is another use, a deeper use, for this web of dualisms. And now I will explain it by taking example the story of Oedipus. If you already know the story of Oedipus, please skip forward until we get to talk about this table. If you don't, listen up. Oedipus, well, somewhere near the end, he is the king of Thebai. He comes from a long bloodline of kings of Thebai. His grandfather was the founder of the city of Thebai. Zeus, the god, raped his sister. And he went to look for her. That's a different story, but you need to know it in order to make sense out of the pattern in the Oedipus saga. Laius, the grandson of Chemdus, the founder of Thebai, wanted to have a child with his wife Jocasta. They went to the oracle of Delphi, and she told them that the son that they will have will end up killing his father and making love to his mother. They were, of course, horrified. They tried to fight the faith, tried to cripple the boy, then tried to kill him. They couldn't kill him. They gave him to a nanny. The nanny gave him away. The shepherd gave it to another shepherd. Anyways, long story short, Oedipus finds out about the prophecy and wants to meet his parents. On his way to Thebai, he tries to cross the river, and on the bridge, a carriage with horses push him out of the road. He gets furious, stops the carriage, kills the man inside. The man is his father, the king. He never knew that. He killed him anyway. On his way to the city, he encounters the Sphinx, a mythical riddle maker which wants to destroy the city of Thebai. Oedipus is the only one brave enough to face him and is able to answer the riddle and save the city. The queen is, of course, very much grateful, invites Oedipus to her home, and they fall in love, they make love, and then Oedipus discovers that this is his mother. She hangs herself, he takes out his eyes and condemns himself to walk the earth and serve as a symbol to all sinners. His daughter, their daughter, Antigona, has a complementary story. Her brother, Creon, it cannot be buried. She goes and defied the words of the gods and buried him, and she is outcast. You have to read it. That's a beautiful play by Sophocles. Now let's try to make sense let's try to find the web of dualisms here and try to make sense out of them. So, two pairs of dualism I have here for you. One has to do with blood relations. In the first two columns, one extreme is overrating blood relations, and the other extreme in the second column is underrating blood relations. This is the dualism that we have here. Another kind of dualism has to do with autochthonous origins, which is indigenous origins. Origins that has to do with a specific place, not immigrated, but from the specific place. The Sphinx has to do with it. The names has to do with it. The one extreme is denying them, the other extreme is accepting them. And the mediating point should be somewhere in the middle. Let's talk about two ways to read this table, this saga of Oedipus. The first one is like I told you. It will be starting from the upper left corner, then going right, going down a line and reading it this way. Candace seeks his sister Europa. Candace kills the dragon. The Sparta kill one another. Labdacos, Laius' father, he is lame, and so on and so forth. We go down from left to right, from up down. This is the chronological. This is how you read myth in a linear time. But there is something more than that. There is also the absolute time. In order to make sense out of the myth, we need to read it vertically. We need to read each column by itself and with its pair column. So let's focus on the first column first. Candace seeks his sister Europa, which was ravished by Zeus. In the same extreme, Oedipus marries his mother, Jocasta. Antigone buries her brother, Polynices, despite the prohibition of the gods. Now, in the other extreme, the Sparta kill one another, guys from the same city, which are basically blood related, as we can see in Santa Marta. Everybody's a cousin. Same goes for Sparta. They kill one another. They are underrating blood relations. Oedipus kills his father Laius, underrating blood relations. Articolus kills his brother, and again, we are in the extreme. The truth, the meaning, the mediating factor should be somewhere in the middle. It's not here in this myth, but let's see a different example. So the geographical feature of Egypt, the most important geographical feature of Egypt, is the River Nile. The River Nile is life. It represents a constant flow of life, and there is a very literal, very visible separation between the fertile land and the desert dead land. The desert land is red and white, very, very, very obvious, and the water are so blue, the vegetation rather than so green. The fertile land, the floodplains are fertile, green with vegetation, black soil, very much alive. This is a dualism, life and death, fertile and barren. They are visible, they are part of the scenery, they are part of the geography, they will also be a part of the myth. The relation is pretty obvious in that sense, but we need to pay attention to it. There is something more about Egyptian myth. The Egyptians worshipped gods with the heads and with the shapes of animals because they saw that there is something more in an animal. This is the soul. The ancient Egyptians were the first to separate body and soul, matter and spirit. They were obsessed even with the idea of soul continuing and being separate of the physical body. They had elaborate myths about the land of the dead, what happens to the soul after the death, and so on. Let's go back for a second to the Sphinx in the Oedipuscian myth. So the Sphinx asks a riddle to Oedipus. The riddle is this: what is that in the morning goes on 4 legs, at midday on 2, and in the evening on 3? The answer Oedipus gives is man. Because when we are babies, we crawl on all 4. And in our midday, when we are young, we walk on 2. And when we are at old age, we need a walking aid and we use a cane. We walk on 3. Now, the 2 extremes are old age and infancy. The mediating part is our best years, when we are young adults. This is the mediating factor. This is the golden point. This is the bibliography I used for this presentation, for this lecture. You will find this presentation in your Google Classroom as always. Please follow the links, and see